Their goal is to create the global control system. The phone is the key node. Everyone's got a phone, even in the middle of nowhere in Africa or Mexico. And they're bringing in digital ID in every country now. You don't need the infrastructure. They put you on, all citizens, on digital ID. You've got your smartphone, and then that's pretty much it. I'm shocked with how fast this is happening. Only God has the capability to create a soul and a person, or an angel, or this spirit. That's the essence of your sentience. The AI, the devil's just trying to copy everything. Just because AI is there and all this scientific dictatorship technology, it's going to be used. There's no way back. It's like Pandora's box. The AI it's not, nothing that hasn't been done before. It's just a newer version of what's been going on since the beginning of time.
Welcome to the Staying Free podcast. In this episode, I spoke with Hrvoje Morić, and I think I finally nailed the pronunciation of his name here. Hrvoje is a returning guest, so he was on the show in January. I can't remember the episode number, but that was my first in-person conversation, and we did another in-person conversation for this one. He came over to my place here in Puerto Vallarta, and we had an interesting conversation about all kinds of different stuff, from AI and transhumanism to global affairs and God and prophecy and all kinds of different themes. So if you don't know Hrvoje, then you should definitely check out his podcast, the Geopolitics Empire podcast. He has really, really interesting guests there, and he's got a TNT show as well. And Hrvoje is genuinely one of the smartest people I know. He is so clued up on everything going on with, geopolitics and all of that kind of stuff, which makes sense given the name of his podcast. But he's incredibly well-researched and well-read, so always appreciate him giving me his time and his perspective. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode. We stepped it up again for this one and did a 2-camera setup. So this worked really well for about half of the conversation, and then unfortunately one of the cameras stopped recording. So if you're watching the video version of this, you've got me and Hrvoje for the first half, and then you've just got Hrvoje for the second half since we lost my camera feed. But it's all good. It's all part of the learning experience. All right, if you like the episode, do give it a like and a share on social media. If you're enjoying the podcast so far, make sure you give it a 5-star rating in whichever podcast app you're using. If you're new here, then welcome. Do give the podcast a subscribe for future episodes. Please also consider supporting me. You can do that via Buy Me a Coffee with one-off donations or monthly donations, as well as Bitcoin tips as well. Links for those are in the description. And as always, tips are hugely appreciated and will go directly towards the costs of running the show. All right, let's get into the episode. Hrvoje. Oh, I got it? Oh, man. I'm getting closer there, right? Yeah. Welcome back, and welcome to my house, and welcome to Puerto Vallarta. It's cool to have you back on the pod.
It's good to be back and to be back at the beach as well. So
yeah, definitely. Have you been to the beach yet?
Oh yeah. Did
Nice.
you see my tan?
Oh yeah. You're looking more Mexican by the way. Yeah, man. It's obviously like we're doing something a bit more special again today. I think we've even stepped it up from last time. We're going like 2 cameras now, so yeah, this is cool. It's cool to have the opportunity to do it. I feel like with you being like another kind of freedom podcaster, so close, talking about all similar kind of things, it's nice to be able to like do this every now and again.
And thanks to my supporters, I'm able to upgrade my equipment. I got my 2 Rode mics. I got my new. This is the first time I think I'm using my fancy video camera. So
yeah. Well, I mean, have you used it yet? so far, I've been pulling.
You've got the privilege.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So the deal is that I'm gonna teach you how to use the camera, and you give me an episode.
There you go.
And talk about some cool stuff. So yeah, let's get straight into it, man. What's new since the last time we chatted? I can't remember the episode number, but it was in January. So what's been going on with you?
Not much, just trudging along, and just like the Ukraine war, not much has changed there. War of attrition, and I've just been focused on, just doing my thing, TNT Radio, the podcast. Opened up a Substack, slowly get that going, and then, my biggest obsession is the algorithm, the Ghetto, and watching this advance, and it's going off at light speed. This this trend, it's unstoppable. So yeah.
Yeah, man, it's really wild. I don't know if I was telling you the other night when we went out for dinner. Like, I'm done with YouTube now. I mean, I've got my like second strike, and it was so ridiculous. Like, basically, the only word that was said was the vaccine was mentioned one time, and it was preceded by the word toxic. So that was it. One time in the entire thing, toxic vaccine. That's it. It was such a kind of side issue. I mean, we weren't even really talking about that. And YouTube, found it immediately, pulled the episode, gave me another strike. And it's just like, if that's the level of censorship they're going to go with, I just cannot be bothered spending my time with it.
Yeah, I mean, I just got a strike as well. I had on Moldovan politician Yuri Roshka, and the main theme wasn't the vaccine, but he did go into COVID and same thing, to discuss how it was a poison shot or whatever, and that got me my strike. I thought I know things are gonna get worse, but we all fell into that false sense of security, right? Like this lull of we're in the eye of the storm. The whole COVID thing came, they pulled back a little, and they're gonna push further again, and you kind of got complacent, and I got my first strike, so. You're on. No, I mean, right now I'm on one. I've gotten many before, but you're on probation for 3 months. So
yeah,
my last podcast I didn't upload on YouTube either. It was with David Škripac, Canadian, Croatian, Slovenian, who served in the Canadian forces, and we I don't want to chance it, because there's still people who just go to YouTube. Like I uploaded my interview with Colonel McGregor like a week later. And the guy on YouTube comments, I wish you could put the date that this was posted. I'm like, are you serious? I just posted the link to my website. I'm like, you go to my website. Like, your only interaction with my podcast is through YouTube. Like, you understand? Like, there's a whole other world outside of YouTube.
Well, yeah, there is, and that world is like growing massively as well. So, like, let's start there, because, like, my view from seeing everything that's going on with YouTube is that. It used to be that YouTube was like a one-stop shop. You go there, you get everything that you want. And now it's like YouTube has kind of fenced off this entire area of any political discussion, any discussion about kind of like matters of health and things like this. It's like all of that kind of area now, which was a massive part of YouTube, you just can't go there anymore. So you've got to go to another platform. So you've got to go to, Rumble or Odyssey or Rockfin or whatever other platform, BitChute, these other ones. And it seems obvious to me that YouTube is completely killing their business with, did I say YouTube? Google or YouTube? But Google is killing YouTube basically through their actions. And I want to know your thoughts on why you think that they would do that, because, we supposedly live in a capitalist world, and yet we see these companies that are kind of just, doing these own goal type actions. And, why would they do that? I mean, it's obviously losing the money. I don't think that people would flee YouTube if they, for instance, had this content and just said, look, we'll let you talk about what you want to talk about. But on the other hand, people will flee that platform if they don't allow free speech.
I think that's the wrong paradigm from which to look at it. Again, my foundational worldview, we've talked about it before, I won't go into depth, but I believe in the Bible, and a lot of people who aren't Christians are familiar with the whole lore, right? Prophecy, end times, all of that stuff. And so for me, I'm looking at it from that view. It's very black-pilled, if you will. Ultimately, it's white-pilled. And, it's the white pill that a lot of people don't want to accept, Jesus Christ. But it is ultimately white-pilled if you believe in Jesus. But if you don't, you're going to say, I'm black-pilled, right? So on the material plane, it's very black-pilling. And so I don't think for them profits or the logic, the capitalist logic matters for them. I think what we're seeing now is their goal is to create the global control system. And so capitalism, profits, I think these elites have all the profits that they need. So they don't need any more profits. So they can take as many hits, losing, that's what they're doing with ESG, making these corporations go bankrupt intentionally, because they're in the process of monopolizing at the global level, centralizing corporations, the digital space, transport, everything. And so they have to do away. They have to cut off a lot of, people. A lot of people are going to get killed. A lot of businesses are going to go down. And so it's like this, what do you call it? The wheat and the tare, sifting of the wheat, the chaff and the wheat. And so from their perspective, and so I don't think they really care because they have a Malthusian view. So that means lowering the physical population of humans on YouTube. That means, getting rid of however many content creators they don't like. And so they're building this global algorithm ghetto digital control system. And you're seeing it everywhere slowly if you're paying attention in real life with all of the apps. They're slowly severing the physical realm and putting us all where your only option is the digital. Like I'm at this hotel, I'm only there because someone that I know has this timeshare or whatever. So otherwise I wouldn't even go. But you go to the shop, you can't even pay with cash. I came with a pocket full of cash, and you got to scan. I don't have your armband. This is literally like the Mark of the Beast system. You can't even pay with cash, and this is where we're headed.
Yeah. I'm surprised that's happened in Mexico because like one of the things I really like about here is that you can basically pay for cash like pretty much everywhere, and in fact, in many cases, they only accept cash. Like so many times I've gone somewhere and they'll either only accept cash or they'll give you a discount with cash for sure. Like they'll give you a surcharge if you pay with card. Completely different to Europe, completely different to America. So yeah, it sucks that kind of thing is kind of coming over here, I guess.
But I think this can change rapidly. I just posted a clip from one of my contributors, Nikola Mikovic, who was out in Kazakhstan recently, where I used to live. And he made the point, he was shocked that you can't do anything now in Kazakhstan without apps. It's pretty much digitized. And the people like it because they have a young generation, average 30-year-olds. And he said it's going to take longer in Europe because it's an older generation that's more conservative and say that they don't like change, he was saying. But I've been saying this, but I've also seen other people say now that with technology, they can bring this stuff in really quickly. And you're seeing it in Africa. So when you say like in Mexico, where it's more third world and less infrastructure, and for me, like that doesn't matter because the phone is the key node. Everyone's got a phone, even in the middle of nowhere in Africa or Mexico. And they're bringing in digital ID in every country now. So the digital ID is coming in. It's just a few components, and you don't need the infrastructure. It's just they put you on, all citizens on digital ID. You've got your smartphone, and then that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And the internet, which now they're giving you so many options. You've got Starlink, you've got landlines, you've got 4G. So the internet is there, smartphone is there, digital ID is incoming as they get rid of the cash. So in Mexico and Africa and Paris, the governments and corporations can just snap their fingers, boom, cash is gone, and we're all in the algorithm ghetto. That's my view.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem kind of strange to me that you see like how quick the government are to like jump on new technologies like 4G, 5G, this kind of thing. Governments get that done so quickly, and yet, like you look at the potholes in the roads and it's like, when are you going to fix my roads? But I'm not entirely complaining because I like to have fast internet and stuff, but I would, in my view, it's like let the private companies kind of like deal with that. If I want the fast internet, I'll get it. But the government seem in this real rush to be like, we're going to give everyone this super fast, internet access. We're going to drive down the prices. We're going to drive down prices of these kind of things, like keeping everyone online. And yet, when it comes to things that you kind of want the government to do, just like in your local area, or whatever, that doesn't get done. And that does seem suspicious to me. Like if a government is in a rush, much like with the vaccine, right? It's like as soon as the vaccine was a thing, it was like governments were just absolutely head over heels, just going, they would move in mountains to make sure that everyone took this jab. And it's like, okay, well, where were you, with all of these other health ailments in the past that, need resolving? Where were you about, the NHS waiting list in the UK, for instance? It's like, they don't want to fix that. But as soon as the vaccine comes around, it's like, oh, we got all of the time, money, and resources in the world for this stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up, where you notice wherever there's, in general, wherever they're subsidizing or making things cheap to push, that's their agenda. And the stuff that they're making expensive, now they're making flying and transport expensive. I think it was in the Netherlands, they've banned cruise ships because of the weather, climate change, right?
Really?
Yeah, so more and more you're seeing them ban this stuff. And I saw someone tweeting in Canada now, I think it was Toronto, the infrastructure is just collapsing, dilapidated. It's taking forever to get anywhere. And the government has intentionally not, for years, dealt with that infrastructure. But think about it, 15-minute city. You're not going to be able, because everything's just so collapsed where you are, you won't be able to, it'll take you forever to get out of your little space. So more often than not, you'll just not go anywhere. So it does play into that agenda.
Yeah. What do you think to everything that's happening at the moment with like AI? Where does that come into all of this? Because that's like, just a massive thing at the moment. Is this part of the psyop, do you think?
I think AI is, that's a tough one. I don't buy the hype. I think what AI basically is, it'll never become sentient. If you ask me, they might try. They're always trying to sell us these fears, which is the pretext to bring in their power grabs. And look at Sam Altman of ChatGPT, OpenAI, AI, and now Worldcoin. And I was saying this on TNT like months ago. They whip out the AI. It's the same old situation. They carry out 9/11 terror, and then the solution is, pay more control, TSA checkpoints, surveillance, and it's the same principle over and over and over because the people are stupid. They're dumb. They're naive. And with AI, it's like, okay, now you've got deep fakes. You can't tell what is what. You can't verify. So the solution then is the digital ID, yes, which is what Worldcoin is, the global digital ID. So you got Altman whips out the AI. Oh, look at this problem. Oh, I got the solution, digital ID. So now, even he said to access the internet, you're going to need to have your digital ID. You're going to need to scan your eye on the orb or whatever to then log in, so we know that you're the human, and then they can see everything. So they'll be able to monitor everything you're doing. So if you make one wrong move on the internet, you are, in the algorithm ghetto. And I think also the AI, I think it's just a tool. They program it. It won't become sentient, and it just allows them to monitor it. Here's the best analogy. IBM created the first computer. It was a paper computer for the Nazis to classify who were Jews, who were gypsies, who were whoever, political, religious views, so then they can be able to quickly sift information and then put the dissidents or Jews or whoever were their targets in the ghettos and leave the others alone. And I think that's basically what AI is. Our YouTube, that's what they deploy first, is to detect the, when you say fake pandemic, the AI does that. So it's not it's not going to become sentient. It's just an advanced tool to be able to monitor. That's my take.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think it will become sentient. And when people say that, AI can become sentient, that doesn't make any sense to me, like at all. Like, it seems to me that to say AI will become sentient is basically to say, well, like, it will fool me enough for me to believe it will be sentient, but it never will be sentient. I mean, you can make a machine, you can keep kind of making a machine more and more advanced, more and more advanced. You can, give it emotions that seem, human, etc. You can do all of these things, but at the end of it, you have just created a very, very good computer. I mean, I'm certainly not kind of, a believer in a way that you are, right, when it comes to religion and stuff. But I can still recognize that the idea of mistaking a very advanced computer for something being sentient is, to me, nonsensical. There's something intrinsic about life. There's something in the substance of life there that makes something alive and sentient. And there's a computer can never be that. And it really irritates me when people say, "Oh, well, at some point we should start affording rights to computers. Like if the AI gets so good, we should start giving it rights and things like that." I'm like, are you out of your mind? I mean, it's a computer. It's a very good computer, and you're almost openly admitting, like, if it can fool me, I'm willing to, throw everything I know about life out the window and just treat it as life.
Well, I think what you just said, from my viewpoint, philosophical, religious, it's soul or spirit.
Yeah.
And that you cannot do that. Only God has the capability to create a soul and a person, or an angel, or this spirit. That's the essence of your sentience.
Yeah.
It's not our physical body. When your physical body dies, you still exist as your spirit, and then depends where you're going to go, heaven or hell, right? But the AI, the devil's just trying to copy everything. And in many ways, man has also looked at God's creation and mimicked it, right? Like cameras mimic our eyeballs, right? Or airplanes mimic birds. So those are good examples. But then you've got the devil who's trying to create this global surveillance state. Like a god is omniscient. He can see everything. And so the devil's trying to do the same thing. He's trying to create these, biotechnological transhuman creatures. But there's a limit. He can't. I don't think he'll ever be able to do it. But, who knows what's in the devil's head?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's funny, I find myself agreeing with a lot of what you say, but not even from like a kind of Christian viewpoint, just more from just a general sense that this idea of like deception, almost kind of glorifying deception, saying, if this AI can deceive us, it is sentient, we're going to glorify it. And there does seem to be something kind of inherently evil about that. It's like, there's something for me inherently evil about rejecting truth and accepting lies, in whatever form that takes. And this seems to be like, one of the most poignant examples of that is accepting AI as being life just because it appears to be life. It's like the ultimate fakery. It's like, will you accept something as being a divine creation, which we know it is not. We know is created by man, or you might say by the devil, but it still comes back to the same point. Yeah.
And I had a great conversation the other day on TNT Radio with Bruce Pardy of rightsprobe.org. He's this Canadian professor, and we were talking about the managerial state and technocracy, and he was saying, it's like if the technology will be created, it's going to be used. So he's kind of like me, also. Maybe, I don't know if you'll agree, but black-pilled, it sounded like that we're going down this road. But if we can create this monster technology, it's not like the morals or ethics drive our actions. It's, look at this shiny thing. Let's see let's press the button and see what happens. That's how humans are. And so just because AI is there and all this scientific dictatorship technology, it's going to be used. There's no way back. It's like Pandora's box. Yeah. And so that's what he was arguing, and I agree with him. And in many ways, it's nothing new. Again, if you go back to man just inventing idols, back in the day, he'd fashion a wooden statue or a rock statue or a golden idol and worship it. And this is nothing new. The AI it's not, nothing that hasn't been done before. It's just a newer version of what's been going on since the beginning of time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you could take that right back to the story of Adam and Eve, right? You could take that right back to the story of eating from the apple from the forbidden tree. I'm not sure about this.
Well, yeah, and I was talking about this on TNT yesterday with I think Terry Wolf, because I talk a little bit about the New Age stuff and people who talk about Christ consciousness, and it has to do with AI and transhumanism, where this idea where you can become gods, because that's what the serpent told in the garden. He said, "Forget God," because it's a binary where God is the creator, you are the creation. There's an order. You follow the creator. But the devil says, "No, you are gods. Forget about God." And that's kind of the idea of transhumanism and AI. These Silicon Valley bigwigs. That's their philosophy. But they're also telling us that you can be your own savior. You don't need an external savior. So that's also interesting.
That is really interesting. Yeah, I wonder whether that's a sliding scale, right? Because you could say that on one hand you've got like very, I guess, rudimentary kind of AI type things, and then you kind of continue up that scale, and then at the other end you've got like changing people's DNA, you've got injecting, like RNA, DNA, whatever it might be, changing the structure of people's DNA. That's kind of on the extreme end. And I wonder whether there's this kind of like a lot of stuff in the middle, which, some people might recognize and some wouldn't. So like maybe with something like ChatGPT, maybe you can kind of recognize more than others. You're like a bit more sensitive to that being kind of like down a bad road. And other people, they're going to wait until it takes a human form. They're going to wait until it's, some kind of actual like human-like form, which has the AI in it. And maybe at that point they'll be like, now we're playing God. But I wonder whether there's just a sliding scale of how much we are playing God.
That's a good question. I interviewed Mary Harrington in my podcast. She writes for Unheard. She's got this great book, Feminism Against Progress, I think. And she touches on this. She calls it cyborg theocracy, meat Lego Gnosticism. She's got these great terms that she comes up with. And she argues, I wouldn't disagree with her. She says that contraception was the first transhumanist technology because it allowed women to upgrade their bodies. And then the whole transgender thing is along that road to transhumanism, because I think the whole transgender thing is not really about LGBT plus stuff. It's this global elite ideology sold to us to break down that binary, again, of male, female, God, creator, creation, to bring us into this. Because, some people have they've made interesting comments that angels don't have a gender, that they're sexless. So if Lucifer and the angels are pushing this, that's one interesting thing. They don't have a gender, right?
But wait,
or they might be one gender, but in any case, the whole transhuman metaverse is where you get rid of your natural God-given role. And now you can be anything. You can be a monkey. You can be a unicorn. People are dressing up as kitty cats because it's like they're preparing us for the digital algorithm ghetto where you can be anything you want, right? And so I feel like that transgender thing is to break down our foundations and mores to then prepare us for what's coming.
I wonder what the end game there is. Is it that we all enter the metaverse, and at that point you'll basically get to state, oh, you know what, I identify as this, I identify as a man, I identify as a woman, I identify as a cat. And then at that point, it's just like, oh yeah, of course you do. Yeah, that's exactly what you are. Here, put the headset on and you go into the metaverse. Like, we'll just kind of keep your fluids going for the next 40 years of your life. Like,
I don't doubt that's kind of what they want, just for us to stay home on the VR, and then you get delivered to your home, the Soylent Green, whatever. Like just this week on Independent, in Britain, you had this, I forget, Greg Wallace or whatever his name is, this about eating human meat. And it's a satire, right?
Yeah.
But it's really well made. And I shared the clip initially thinking was real. He's like, they've created meat in the laboratory, like, Beyond Meat with human proteins. However they do that, they start with one human protein and they replicate it. And so selling this idea of cannibalism, which is Soylent Green, if you watch the movie, which took place in 2022.
Wait, what do you mean about Soylent Green?
So this movie was made, I think, in the 70s, 1973, and it talks about how it's the climate change agenda. Everything's collapsing, too many people, overpopulation, climate change, whatever. And then there's no resources. They lock people into cities. And this is taking place in the year 2022, right, last year. And there's no more food. And so they sell to people some like something like Beyond Meat or whatever, some laboratory synthetic chemical food, which is pretty much a lot of our food today, in the supermarkets. It's all just chemicals and colors, right, and crap. But they put humans in it. They take people off the streets in garbage trucks, mash them up, and then put them back into the Soylent Green. And so now you've got Greg Wallace on the Independent. It's satire, but at the same time, I don't think we should. They want us to dismiss it and say it's satire, but I actually think even through it being satire, they're attempting to normalize it. They're like, just kidding, not really. That's right. Kind of their way to get to deflect criticism. It's just satire, but no, they're really introducing this idea in our heads, even through satire, of normalizing cannibalism.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of things that if you actually look back at it now, it seemed like satire, and now it's like, oh, it's come true. A lot of the sci-fi movies, I mean, like what you were saying before about, is the goal that we all just put a headset on and just go into the metaverse?
Matrix, right?
Yeah, it's just the Matrix, right? But then I'm like, did the Matrix just tune into some kind of archetype that exists in reality, and it was just like a really well written thing? Or are these people looking at the Matrix and they're going, great idea, guys, like let's see what we can do?
No, I mean, I'd go even more black-pilled and think that the writers of that script, because everything that, Hollywood is one arm of the globalists. Just like you've got the military, the financial space, the technological space, and the cultural space, they are driving it. And so these elites, I think, they've got strategic plans. They've got so many resources, and so they've probably got, private organizations that formulate these detailed strategic plans, and it doesn't necessarily go always how they want, but they can say by this year we're going to have this technology, we'll be able to carry out this plan, and so that I think they wrote Matrix knowing that was part of their plan, and that they would be at some future point, they think they'd be capable of it. So I don't think. When you say, what do you, the cart before the horse or whatever, yeah. I think that the writers were in on it, or people that formed part of that team. You look at the brothers now, they're transgender, the writers of The Matrix.
That's a good point.
Again, yeah. So it's like, and then that's not the only movie. There's so many of these movies now that are pushing us along that same path. So it's not coincidence.
Yeah, but do you not, in the movie The Matrix, they very much present it as a bad thing. They're not glorifying that world. So I would have thought that if they were pushing it, they would have shown some good side of it, some positive side of, being in the pod or whatever. But I think that movie is pretty squarely saying this is like hell, this is a prison.
Yeah, I don't know.
But you're right. Thinking about the fact that they did go transgender and stuff. That is interesting. I find it interesting, some of the people who do go transgender. This also happened with Bradley Manning becoming Chelsea Manning. It seems to happen to quite a lot of very prominent people.
Weird.
In my personal life, I don't know anyone who is actually trans. I don't have any friends or extended family or anything who's trans, and yet there's a lot of people who are in the public eye. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I know. I think that's just another red flag. It's why is it that Chelsea Manning and I can't think of so many more other examples, but yeah, there's something about it,
isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know, but maybe because they are part of some globalist experiment as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or some people who go have breakdown situations, maybe as a way to stay sane, they will become transgender or something. I don't know, but. Yeah, there's something there,
Yeah, there is something there. I find it like a really interesting topic, because it does seem like it's something that's accelerating. And I absolutely have a lot of sympathy for people who they feel like I'm not in this isn't my body, this isn't a body that I kind of feel like is a representation of me, and I feel bad, but I feel bad for them, because I think that there's something in their life. Some area of their life they're probably not working on, or there's some kind of lack there, and they're probably not aligning themselves with truth. And then maybe if you don't align yourself with truth in one area of your life, it kind of ripples out into others. And perhaps, if things kind of go particularly awry, you end up kind of saying, okay, well, I don't know what's true anymore, including my own identity. It seems to me like not just an identity crisis, but a truth crisis as well.
Yeah, I would argue, I unabashedly, my view is that it's not correct, transgenderism. It's you have male and you have female, punto párrafo, what they say in Spanish. That's it. And I was talking to a friend of mine who still works at the tech where I used to teach here in Mexico. When I was teaching, I finished 2017. I quit. There were no transgender students at all. There was maybe one gay student or something like that. But then it's interesting how it all started happening with COVID. So he told me, from 2020 onward, starting with the COVID age of Corona, you started getting transgender students. So he told me now there's maybe 2 or 3 on the high school campus where he is. And they ask him, I think if I can't recall, he said, one student was a female and she asked him to use a male name. But now again, I would say I would have some empathy, as you say, for that person's crisis situation, mm-hmm. but I'm not going to have sympathy where they're asking me now. You see what I'm saying? They paint it as a win-win situation. No, it's a zero-sum game, as I keep saying. So you want to impose now your worldview on me. You want me to call you a girl a boy. That goes against fundamentally my worldview.
Yeah.
So I'm going to lose. One of us has to lose. But then there is a, universal truth.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and I told my friend, like, if I was still working there, I would not call that girl a boy, and I would suffer the consequences. If the administration fires me, they fire me. Then he told me they were forced to take re-education classes, like, because you have to take like 20, 30 hours every semester of as teachers training. Usually it's stuff related to teaching, right? New techniques. He told me he had to take a course on this like feminist toxic masculinity. And I told I told him if I was still teaching and they forced me to take that, I'm teaching politics and history. What does toxic masculinity have to do with anything? And I would have said, I'm not taking the course, and I just keep teaching. And I'd wait for them to show up and say, you're fired, because, and I think this is what more people need to do, whether it's with the COVID mandates or whatever. We need to be willing to risk being fired from our job. Like, I don't care about my job. I always say I'll go sell tacos, I'll work in construction, I'll do whatever, but I'm not going to go against my values regardless.
Exactly. Well, I think it's more than that. It's that you're not going to compromise on the truth. Like, you're not going to actually get into any kind of dialogue and say, okay, well, I'm going to like be willing to accept this non-truth. And going back to what you were saying, maybe that's how this kind of spreads. Like, once you accept, because I truly believe that once you start accepting the small untruths, the bigger ones kind of grow from that. Like, and I wonder whether it's also a contagious thing. Like, if you accept something that's not a truth and you say, well, if you're a male and you say, well, no, I'm a female, and then you say to someone else, you must accept me as a female, and you must agree that I am a female. If that person doesn't believe it but then accepts it, then maybe that's the contagion of a kind of untruth, and then that might grow within them. So I do think that it's important for people to always just say, like, what is my belief system, and am I compromising on what I deem to be the truth? And that's not being, in any way like transphobic. That's just saying, I don't believe in the fundamental idea that you can identify as something other than your objective like sex, which can be determined at birth. It can be determined by multiple kind of ways of determining that. But someone's sex, like, it's very obvious. I mean, one of the things that stands out to me is like when they dig up like bones and stuff from like, thousands of years ago, they don't look at the bones and they're like, okay, well, this person might have been intersex, this person might have been whatever. They say this was a male or this was a female, from the bone structure. I mean, like, there's absolutely no question about that. And when people today who claim to be the opposite gender, if the exact same thing happened and their fossils were dug up like 2,000 years from now, there would be no question about what it was, right? So like, this isn't like a transgender, what's it called, like a transphobic view. This is just saying, what do I believe to be true about gender? I will accept that as true. I still have sympathy for you. I still have, empathy for the situation, for the situation you're in. I don't wish bad things upon you, but I'm not going to compromise what I know to be true about the way the world works in order to accept that. And I think that that's a totally like valid thing to do. And I actually think that we should be doing it in all areas of our life generally. Because like for me, if you align yourself with truth, like better things happen, your life improves. That's just my experience.
Up until the algorithm Ghetto closes in. But I mean, you can say the same thing for the whole global warming thing where no one says anything and they're like, the propaganda is pushed into the schools now, into the workplace. And then, okay, we got to play along with this whole climate change thing or the whole trans thing. And I've never had the experience in person of anyone calling me transphobic. That's fine. You're heterophobic. You're Christophobic. Again, it goes back to my zero-sum game thing where if you want to call me transphobic, then de facto you're a big religious bigot, right? Let's be fair. So. But anyways, yeah. So
yeah. So anyway, just rewinding back to something that you discussed earlier, and I'm glad that you brought it up because I think that this is like one of the biggest things that people aren't talking about is this Worldcoin thing, and like I've actually had a few conversations. I've been surprised that people don't know about it because it's like, well, this literally is going to be the system. I think everyone's looking at these kind of government documents and UN documents and they're like, oh, like when's this thing going to come about? When are they going to start doing the digital ID thing? I'm like, Worldcoin is it. And I think that governments are also going to piggyback off of them. I mean, that's the front runner. I still think there's other things going on that governments might get on the back of, but it's going to come from in my view, it's going to come from the corporate sector, and the government is going to rally behind it. And I think that it seems to me kind of convenient that just when everyone is falling in love with ChatGPT, you've got the same guy, you've got the managing director, I think he's the founder of ChatGPT, right? You've got the same guy doing this other project, Worldcoin, which, it's incredibly rare for someone like, billionaires, businessmen, whatever it is, to have multiple projects that are of a global scale. I mean, this is why I'm incredibly skeptical of Elon Musk as well, because the chances of one person doing the amount of stuff that he's done without there being some kind of campaign behind him, but without this being, a psyop, they've elevated him to this kind of, this status that he's got. In my view, none of that is organic, but that's a side point. But, with this WorldCoin stuff, it's like, well, isn't ChatGPT enough? This thing's taken over the world, and now you're on with this other thing. And I think that it's almost like people are being lulled into trusting ChatGPT because they're like, oh, it's great, it's free, it's amazing, it's a huge technological advance. I don't want to be late now to this next thing, this WorldCoin. And I guess like there's that. And also when I actually see the images of people like, they're literally taking this orb around. If people haven't seen it, it's like literally taking this orb around, and people are kind of queuing up and they're putting their face to it, getting their iris scanned. And it reminds me of like Lord of the Rings, like the evil thing. I can't remember what the name of it is, but the thing that like Gandalf takes it and you kind of like have to keep it covered over. And if you take the cover off and you like put your hands to it and stuff, you get sucked into the kind of this like evil world, and you start, you see the future in this dark sense. And it looks like that to me. And again, it's another one of these examples. We were mentioning the Matrix before, and it's another example where I'm just like, is it life imitating art imitating life? Like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of old media folks saying, I talked about this in the 2010s or something. Like, this goes way back, like, again, from the Christian perspective and prophecy. This is implied in prophecy. So, like, Christians have been talking about this since, like, a century ago. And it's like, I'm shocked with how fast this is happening. Just like 2 weeks ago when it was the announcement of Musk switching Twitter to X and then accelerating it into the Everything app, and then Putin signs the digital ruble into law, the Russian algorithm Ghetto, and then Worldcoin deploys. It's like, and then the other thing we can talk about, Bukele of El Salvador saying, let's integrate all 7 Central American countries into a Central American Union based on the European Union. Like, what's going on? It's like all happening at hyper light speed. It's unbelievable. And, you had that clip, Tim Hinchcliffe of Sociable, you had him on the podcast not long ago. He's great. I think he posted one of the clips of somewhere, was it at Davos or some IMF dude talking about the 3 basic things that form the beast system. The digital ID, they need to have they need to have your avatar, your player name in the video game, right? Your digital ID, your smartphone for scanning the QR codes and all of that, and then a bank account, which can be with this. If it's the CBDC, it's just your account with the central bank. That's it. They don't even need banks anymore. So those 3 things. Of course, you need the internet to enable all of this. So that's why they're whipping out everywhere. The Starlink's going to cover. You're going to have internet anywhere you go. With Starlink or 4G or governments here in Jalisco, they're building out the internet like crazy. It's the control system. It's not to let you watch Netflix in 5,000K or whatever. So they're deploying that. It's WorldCoin is global digital ID, and then you're going to have if in China you've got the WeChat, in the West you've got the X app, and Musk has come out just saying he wants it to take over the whole he wants X to be the global financial system, and he said he's resurrecting, quote, his 20-year plan for the X bank. And there's a photo with him and Peter Thiel, right, of PayPal, and Peter Thiel is also Bilderberg. Peter Thiel is also CIA with Palantir. He's working with the globalist, the top globalist nodes. And then that goes back to what we were saying earlier. I mean, come on, was it really just these 2 guys and their idea? There has to be an entire team of resources connected to DARPA and global financial elites and everything behind these guys. And so they've planned since the late 90s to bring about X and all this stuff, Thiel and Musk. And it's like Larry Page and Sergey Brin, I think, of Google. They were financed by the Pentagon or CIA. Zuckerberg, Facebook was DARPA LifeLog. You don't think Thiel and Musk were backed by the military-industrial complex? I mean, come on. So these are just the front men. They're the salesmen pitching us this stuff. I don't think they're the creators of it. That made me think of Marcelo Ebrard, the Mexican foreign minister running for president. He just came out and talked about Plan Angel. It should be called Plan Diablo. It was shocking. He's like, we've got this new plan, Angel, where the most important thing is going to be based on the ecosystem of artificial intelligence here in Mexico, and it's going to be nationwide, and it's going to have nationwide facial recognition, morphological detection, so we can detect just by your physique who you are, vehicle tracking all across Mexico, drone tracking. He just, when I looked at that clip, I'm like, this guy didn't come up with this. He's now just a globalist used car salesman. They gave him the paperwork and say, here, I can just imagine some globalist in some back room giving Ebrard, here, this is what you're going to say, now sell it to the Mexican people. And that's just how I see Musk and Zuckerberg and Bezos and all these people. They're just the front, they're the used car salesmen, basically.
Yeah. The big giveaway for Musk is this is a guy who's literally got satellites in the sky orbiting the Earth, right? Like beaming down the Starlink thing. I mean, you don't get that kind of access. You don't get to, have satellites orbiting the Earth without, being in to put it lightly, being in the good books with the right people.
Yeah, and who made the point? Mike Benz was really good. He just pointed out how the only reason Google Earth came about was because CIA gave a satellite to Google for Google Earth. It's exactly what you just said. There's the only way you would do that if there was a relationship. So the only reason we have Google Earth is because it's a CIA approved satellite. So again, we're using all this. I'd call it the devil's technology. DARPA, for me, this Pentagon DARPA elite are coming from a sinister place, and they allowed us initially. These systems were deployed so they can set it up and figure out the little tweaks. Mm-hmm. And now that they've got the web out, now they're tweaking it. It's closing in, and then they're creating a control system. And I think that was the point from the get-go. Even Dr. Mercola, he's got this black pill view as well. Listen to him. He recently just got debanked. Him, his employees, spouses, and children just got debanked. And he's saying the same thing, that he thinks that this was the plan from the very beginning.
Well, Nigel Farage, I don't know if you saw that, he got debanked recently. And they said, I think they've come out and said, oh, it was an accident, or it was some employee, acting rogue or whatever. But, you don't debank someone like Nigel Farage and expect to get away with it. I mean, if he's even banking with NatWest, you would expect for them to be like looking at his account and being like, let's not do anything crazy because he's a big public figure and he can talk, badly about the bank.
You can't barrage the Farage, as he says.
Is that what he said?
And when he was in the EU, yeah.
Right. But, why has this come out, right? Like, the reason I think that it's coming out is because it's this trickling in of these things. It's like, this is the first thing we're starting to see. It's like, okay, this person's got debanked. I mean, I guess the first thing was actually the Canadian trucker protest. That was a big one. Where,
even before, yeah. But these are one of the bigger events.
I'm just talking like since 2020, I guess, like in this kind of recent period. Certainly since I've been switched on. I'm sure it's happened in the past, but that was a big one. That was a big kind of story that they basically like seized these people's funds, and I don't know exactly what they did to the truckers' bank accounts, but I'm pretty sure that they were frozen or something like that. And we've got the thing you mentioned. There's Nigel Farage. It's almost like right now it's being kind of planted there, but it's still kind of got this generally negative spin. The media is still saying, okay, this isn't a good thing, we shouldn't be doing this. But then over time, it will become more and more normalized, right? Similar thing happened with when they were trying to push the vaccines. It was like, initially, you would get like one news host or whatever who would say, hey, you know what, like we should force people to take the vaccine. If they don't take the vaccine, then they shouldn't be allowed to go to a restaurant, right? It's like one person saying it. And then someone else says it, like 3 months later. And then the next month, 3 or 4 people say it. And then it's in the news. And then the politicians start saying it. And then it's this kind of like just tiptoeing towards their ultimate goal, which was always, we're going to try and create, like vaccine fascism, like medical-based segregation. That was always the goal, but they need to kind of get there. And even if it's kind of negative press, it's still just planting that seed, right? It's just planting the seed, planting the seed, planting the seed. And
I could see the population becoming okay with this idea where, oh yeah, this guy, he said something crazy. So it's okay for him to be debanked, because in their minds, like they're like, oh, I'm just gonna follow the rules. Yeah, that guy must have done something wrong. And it's that totalitarian mentality that I think, I've talked with people like Bruce Party, as I just mentioned, and others. People just more and more through nudging, through psychological warfare, perception management, whatever you want to call it, brainwashing, they're coming to eschew, detest freedom and liberty and agency and sovereignty, and accept being told what to do, accept security and comfort, and they're throwing away, like their birthright. I go back to that Old Testament of Esau, where he just traded his birthright for a bowl of soup, and because that was the near-term pleasure, right? You can't suffer, a little. Think, strategically longer term, and just look all around us. I just see, in general, not specific to Mexico, just obese people on their chemical concoctions and food, and Netflix and Amazon and Costco's and Walmart's, and they're just eating it all up, their Googles, their Facebooks, and nobody thinking twice about anything. They're just like the big fat cows being led to the slaughter. And so I could see them thinking, oh yeah, it's this guy said something crazy. And my LinkedIn, I posted that clip of Hrvoje. It went viral on LinkedIn. Like, I got a lot of followers and 10,000 views or something. And there were people there saying, oh yeah, Hrvoje took Russian money. So they were okay with their ideological adversary being thrown into the algorithm ghetto.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want my ideological adversaries, that happening to them,
Yeah. Well, this comes down to like fundamental first principles, doesn't it? It's just like you have to have them even when it's people you disagree with. I mean, there's a lot of people that I don't like, but I don't want them to have rules imposed on them that go against, people's kind of natural rights. But yeah, I think this happens a lot. I mean, one of the things recently, I'm interested to get your views on this. Like, there's this kind of campaign amongst some people in the UK at the moment, which is like businesses must accept like cash. And I agree that businesses shouldn't have to accept, bank payments. Like, I totally agree with that. I'm on board with that. I don't think they should have to accept card or bank payments if they don't want to. They should absolutely be able to make that choice. But I also don't think they should be forced to accept cash, because my view is that all you're doing is, by forcing those businesses to accept cash, you're basically saying, okay, well, this money, which governments basically just print out of absolutely nothing and is completely worthless, we're going to force you to take it. What happens once hyperinflation starts setting? Are you going to force these businesses to accept it? What if people don't want it? What if they want to accept real money, hard money, precious metals, Bitcoin? I personally just think this idea of saying this campaign should not be, we're going to force businesses to accept cash. The campaign should be, we're going to stop the government from imposing rules where businesses have to accept CBDC or digital payments. There's a crucial difference there. And I think that we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater if we say businesses have to accept cash, because what you're doing is you're saying businesses have to accept government monopoly money. That's what I see when I see that.
I mean, I guess I would slightly disagree, because I view the cash as, number one, it's legal tender. So it cannot be
but that's
rejected.
by decree. That's by decree anyway. Why should it?
But it was also, it's like the first option. If we go back before the digital age, it was always only, first just cash, not even credit cards. But it's also the most private form of payment. So I think the point would be the businesses, there are businesses that are saying, we won't accept cash. I don't think that should be, because for me, that's like the cornerstone of privacy, because that's the most private form of payment. So for me, that's like the most basic. So I think they should accept by default cash, and then credit cards, debit cards, anything else that they want is great. But that's like, for me, the cornerstone, the foundation.
Okay, but let me let me posit this then. So let's say that I say to you, right, you're a business and you're offering some service. Let's say you're offering like premium subscription to podcasts or whatever it is, and I come to you and I say, okay, Hrvoje, I'm gonna pay for this, but I want to pay you in potatoes. Like you might want to accept the potatoes, but you might just say, well, no, I don't want to accept your potatoes, thanks. Why is the government allowed to say you've got to accept this stuff that we print out of thin air, but I can't just arbitrarily give something that you should accept for your goods and services? Shouldn't you have the choice?
I mean, that goes back to money and currency, and I'm not like an anarchist. I think government can be good, and you need a basic structure like a skeleton. Like you build a boat or a car, you have the skeleton structure. It's like how I view government, and you need a currency for society to function. Like here we use pesos everywhere. Imagine everyone going to the Walmart and paying with potatoes.
But right? it wouldn't happen because what everyone ends up ultimately kind of deciding upon, it's decided based upon what people perceive to have value. Now, right now, it makes sense for businesses to accept cash because it does actually have real intrinsic value. But I also think that if a business says, I don't want to accept any fiat currency, you got to come and pay me in silver coins, I think the business should be allowed to do that. Someone shouldn't be forced to sell.
Yeah, but they would quickly fail. No one, who would?
Yeah, they might. But again, it just comes back to the first principle. They might decide not to do that and then they want to accept cash. But then that feeds into what I'm saying, which is that it's determined, what you accept is back to being determined based upon what the market wants. If people want to accept the cash, like you said, it's probably going to fail. So people therefore say, okay, well, I'll accept the cash because it's going to fail just accepting silver and gold. In that case, that's their own voluntary decision to accept the cash. But I don't think that people should be forced to accept cash, because what if I just say, hey, you know what? Like I want to I'm doing a project where all I'm going to accept is gold or silver or Bitcoin, right? What if someone wants to do that? Is the government why should the government come in and say, no, sorry, we're not going to allow that. You have to accept cash. And it's like, well, I don't want the cash, thanks. If I get the cash, I'm just going to go and change it for gold and silver anyway. I don't want the effort. I don't want the middleman. It kind of like messes up, the way that I do my accounting. I think people should be able to accept what they want. And I actually think that will ultimately mean that people do still accept cash, because for most people, that is a logical decision. So I just think we should change. I think that we should step back and think about first principles and where they lead. Because if you just say everyone should accept cash, to me, I'm just saying, okay, well, the government prints the cash. Like you've not really escaped anything there. All you've done is you force people to accept something which one day will probably be valueless, and already in many people's eyes is right now.
Yeah, I'm still going to stick with the cash. I mean, I know the whole fiat thing, and I just kind of, some things in this globalist world, I just kind of accept, and I feel like, what are we going to do realistically? But as you say, yeah, I don't have a problem with businesses accepting.
Okay, let me try one more angle. I know that you don't like podcast debates, but let me try one more. Okay, let's say the government says, hey, you have to accept central bank digital currencies. Are you okay with that?
Well, no, because the thing with cash is that preserves your power and anonymity and privacy, but CBDC doesn't. True,
yeah, it doesn't. But your argument was that people need a thing to transact in, right? Like gold or silver coins will still have those properties. Bitcoin still has those properties. So what I'm saying is that I could use the same argument of saying, everyone needs something to transact in. And if the governments have determined that CBDCs are money in the future, and they say, hey, look, this is what we've determined, you have to accept it. You've already set that precedence by saying people have to accept cash. Well, then the next step will be you just wait, you fast forward 20 years. And if you set a precedent that the government gets to determine what people should accept for the value of their goods and services, etc., well, one day they just bait and switch it to a CBDC.
I mean, that's why you fight to have a good government, and then CBDCs. This is unprecedented in world history as well, because in history you've always had, in the Spanish empires in Europe, you've had silver coins, gold coins. In Rome, you've always had physical coins, which were always anonymous. But this is a whole new paradigm, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. We'll agree to disagree on that one. What about so? In terms of the CBDC thing, where is the world on that? I can't say I keep a massively close eye on what's going on with CBDCs. Are we on the precipice now?
I mean, it's advancing. Fed now and the Worldcoin stuff. Marty Bent just did a good post about that. Some of my guests have pointed out, all the world leaders and countries are bending over backward to see who can be the first to deploy these. And, the Russians are more advanced than America. So again, this blows a hole in that whole multipolarity BRICS thing. I know I don't believe it. Sorry, I'm not sorry. There are people that are angry with me that I don't buy the whole Putin saving the world, BRICS, and multipolarity are our salvation. It's two heads of the same coin, as my recent podcast guest said. And the Chinese and the Russians and everyone are advancing as much as they're seeing. The Europeans and the Americans and the Canadians who can develop their CBDC first. So these are the new rules of the game, and so they're all advancing. How quick, I don't know, but I think pretty quick. And I think a lot of things are happening behind the scenes with our banks, with our banking apps, with everything, that it's happening in the background slowly. And I think we're just going to wake up. It's like the frog and the slow boil. I think that's what's going on. I mentioned before, it was like 2020, 2021. Our bank apps in Mexico forced us to turn on geolocation. With the latest, like a month or two ago, with the latest update to the bank app, all of a sudden it appeared the carbon social credit system. So I log into my app now. I was shocked. It's like it's talking about tracking, quantifying your energy usage, but because I still use cash, and I don't work for someone, so I don't get like a regular salary. They have really nothing to track on me so far.
Yeah, but then they'll probably just deem that and taking cash out as an absolute matter is actually going to, negatively impact you anyway. They'll just assume that if you're taking cash out, that it's used for
they can't. When I buy an airplane ticket, which I guess I have to with the credit card, then they can call. Then they can track my miles and say you can't buy airplane tickets in the future because you've already flown too much. So I think slowly it's being built while we're sleeping. So yeah, I think it's advancing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's such a shame to hear that it's happening in Mexico. I've just not been privy to any of this stuff. Like my experience here has just been, aside from like the mask wearing, which was like they were pretty hot on that during certainly last year and the year before. Like this year is perfectly fine, but now I haven't noticed that much totalitarian creep here. But obviously,
I just heard we're in the state of Jalisco. It's the first state in Mexico to now deploy the digital driver's license. So, I've got a physical Mexican driver's license. Now you can get your digital. It's happening in states all across the United States and other countries. And so again, everything's going to be, all of your licenses and papers and stuff are all going to be digital. And that's going to force you to carry your tracking device phone around. I often don't have it with me. Like I think I mentioned before, I was at the beach. I go to the restaurant and the menu is a QR code. And I don't have a phone. And the guy's looking at me. Oh, you don't have a phone? Like I'm weird. I'm like, I'm swimming in the ocean. You want me to swim with my phone? Or am I supposed to put my phone on the beach so someone can take it? Like, are you retarded? Seriously, dude, waiter guy? Like really the level of these NPC people. I mean, it's nuts. Like, so he whips out this tablet, right? The menu on the tablet.
Yeah.
And
they've always got a backup. They've always got their own tablet.
On a paper, physical, analog, non-digital menu, and that's not very environmentally friendly.
Yeah, but in fairness to them having the digital menu, if I was a cafe or a restaurant or whatever, and we're basically entering this hyperinflation phase, I wouldn't want to be printing menus because by the time you put it on the table, you got to print another one with the new prices on it.
Well, they could just put on the wall, have a chalkboard or something like old-fashioned.
Yeah, but you need to.
They're gonna have a digital menu that everyone can see on the wall, and then just the prices up.
That's what they need. Okay, yeah, digital one on the wall.
But don't force me to carry my phone around. That's like in China and many places now. Even public transport in Mexico now, they're building it out because they're going to take away our cars. And then you can only pay with your digital card, no cash again. So, or with your phone. Yeah. Even I'm reading in UK, they're doing train stations, no more cruise ships. And like I said, in Netherlands, so they're getting rid of cruise ships, flights, they're making them so expensive you can't afford them, or they're doing away with the kiosks and the humans selling stuff. You can only just use your phone or the kiosk. You buy your own ticket yourself.
Yeah.
No more humans needed. So slowly it's.
Do you think that there's any hope in technology, or are you just generally pessimistic about technology? Because personally, I see a lot of solutions there as well as problems. But
given in the face of what we're talking about, what solutions from technology?
Well, for instance,
unless you just destroy these technology, put a virus in the CBDC system,
Well, I'm talking about for me, the most obvious one is Bitcoin. I don't know if you've heard much about Nostr and everything's happening with Nostr now. It's kind of truly decentralized social media where people are literally serving up content, in a decentralized way using decentralized relays and stuff. You've got home servers and things like that now, which are becoming a thing. I haven't got one, but I'm really keen to get one soon where, for instance, all this stuff which people are doing with the smart home stuff, you can do it, but you host everything in a self-sovereign way on your own server. It's not connected to the cloud or anything like that. So I see hope, but people have got to kind of become technologically educated. You can't take the easy route. You're going to have to actually learn and develop and become more technologically capable to use it. But I still think that these things will are a really positive thing. And also I think that as the world gets more kind of dystopic, the legacy world, I think more people are going to actually be willing to put in the time and energy to learn and use these new things.
I mean, in some ways I would only view this stuff as a bandage, not like a solution. Maybe in some ways, as you say, if you apply it, this really makes me think of the last iteration of the Fallout game. I just finished replaying Fallout 3, and whenever I get time, I'm gonna replay that last fancy edition of Fallout, where it's all like a collapsed Mad Max world, and people are tinkering, and in their own communities or homes, they develop these sovereign tech. But it's still. Let's say you do have your home server and all that here on your farm, but as soon as you step out, you have to deal with the, total recall world, and there's nothing really you can do about that as far as I can see it. And then people have also talked about it. I see more and more people talking about this. I talked about this with James Wesley Rawls, former, I think, intelligence officer of survivalblog.com. We talked and YouTube. We talked about in 2021. We had a conversation. YouTube just took down the video a couple months ago and gave me a strike.
Yeah.
But we were talking about if you're in a CBD system, cashless CBD system, no cash again, and okay, let's say you have your own farm, food, berries, meat, whatever, cows, but you have to live on a physical plot of land. Let's say you own that property outright. You still have property taxes, so you got to pay it once a year. What happens if they debank you? There's no more cash, and the only way to pay your property taxes with the CBDC, with the state-sanctioned currency, but you don't have access anymore. So let's say it's January 2024. They institute the CBDC. You've paid your property tax, the physical, but then you get to January 2025. There's no way for you to pay the property tax, so the state can come in and just take your property, and now you're kind of. What do? You're screwed.
Well, you've just made the absolute perfect case there for Bitcoin being people's store of wealth rather than using it as a property.
Yeah, but how do you pay your property tax if the state only accepts?
Well, no, what I'm advocating for is not that you pay exactly that. What I'm advocating for is saying that property should not be people's main store of wealth anyway. Because at the moment, what you've got is a system where most of their wealth is actually in the property. That's where their wealth is stored, and it suffers from exactly this downfall, which is basically that the government can either jack up the taxes or they can just determine that we're taking it. It's a physical thing they can come and take. This is why I think that this is another reason why I think that there can be digital solutions as long as we're using them in a self-sovereign way and using cryptography and this kind of real self-sovereign technology. That is a way that we can actually get around that, because I would like to see the day where rather than people saying, okay, I've got to buy a property because that's where I'm going to store my wealth because I don't want it in this fiat currency.
But I mean, you got to live somewhere. It's not necessarily about storing wealth.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And obviously there is still the thing of you have a property, the government knows about it. But what I'm saying is that it lowers property in terms of being the thing that governments will want to seize, because right now property has just a huge amount of value, so governments want to milk it. But that value, in my view, is very unjustified. It's being used as a kind of store of wealth in the absence of hard money. And I think if we can solve the hard money problem, then governments won't have as much incentive to do something like that.
But I'm not hopeful. I mean, even if you do rent, then it's like the social credit system. Again, even in China, people who have low social credit scores, if you're doing Staying Free podcasts, you're going to have a low social credit score, and then no one's going to rent to you, right?
Yeah.
So even you either have to own property or
True.
rent, and then the social credit system deals with. I think the issue again is not the government seizing for financial reasons, but again, it's the control system. So they don't want, if you're not submitted to their system, they're going to, destroy you. I mean, they literally want to kill us anyway. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. We're just speculating here. We'll just see how this stuff plays out. So
I think we've reached like peak black pill in the conversation. So let's try to like climb back out. Talk to me about Mexico, man. Like, I get a lot of people talking, like asking me, this is probably when people reach out to me privately, probably the number one thing they ask me is about like life out here, like why I've moved, like, just all these kind of questions. Cause I think a lot of people in Europe are just feeling like pretty kind of, I don't know, just pretty put out about the way that things are over there and seeing it get more dystopic, seeing like, the cost of living, like just going up and up, government's just doing crazy stuff. So, I know that obviously you've mentioned here that there's a few things that have been creeping into Mexico that are a little bit dystopian, but like in general, what's been your experience?
I mean, look, that dystopian stuff is happening in every single country. So, yeah. So, when I think about Mexico, it's like I just put that aside because, look, it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
There's nowhere it's not happening unless you go live in Antarctica or I don't know. But so that aside, I don't know. I just kind of like, I've been making ventures into the U.S. this year a couple times, and every time I go, I think about would I go live in the U.S. or not, and I don't have that urge. I just I'm happy in Mexico. It's comfortable in Mexico. The weather is nice. It's sunny, warm, lower cost of living than other places. You get everything you need, and it's just like the people are generally low key. They're not like Americans who freak out. If you're in a long line, people will just wait and be calm, and so yeah. I mean, I just enjoy it here, and I don't have that urge to go anywhere else. So it's nice.
Yeah, I mean, you were like quite early here. How long have you been
2010.
here? 2010, yeah. So you were here like well before the rush. Have you noticed like just kind of a big influx of people coming here like seeking freedom?
I haven't had contact lately with people coming in. I know from 2020 to 2022, there's a huge influx. People consulting with me, just myself with friends and friends of friends, meeting people coming into Mexico, foreigners. I feel like that sort of died down. Some people have returned, some have stayed in Mexico, but there still seems to be a continued interest, and I am reading about more foreigners coming in. But so yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, I love it here. I have like just huge hopes for Mexico generally. I know it's just got so much going for it. It's a really big country. It's close to like Canada and the US, so you have a lot of people coming in from there now. Like the economy has just boomed here. I mean, you probably noticed like the peso just keeps on rising. I mean, it's very rare. Obviously, that's against the dollar and stuff like that, but it's very rare to see any currencies in this kind of current economic climate gaining value against the dollar. And I think that's a reflection of just how much awesome stuff is happening here. There's just so much like potential for Mexico generally.
I think since we last spoke, this has accelerated. So there's a lot of development coming in, foreign direct investments. This is whole part of that nearshoring thing, and I think it's related to that topic, about the regional integration and regional unions. So here's something interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. He works in industry, sometimes the manufacturing industry here in Mexico. Sometimes he travels to the U.S. They send him to China or whatever. And he just told me one of these big transnational corporations, I don't know if it's a European company or what. So he told me his higher up had a meeting with the higher ups, and that they were discussing the decoupling with China, that they have to now separate from China and bring manufacturing to Mexico, to North America, because of the war that's coming. So you've got higher ups in corporations talking about coming war with China. And so that's why they have to separate now their manufacturing. And so that's interesting. I see us on the path towards that, but also because of the regional unions. So that's why Mexico is booming, because they're bringing in, Tesla in Nuevo León.
Yeah.
I think Chinese EV companies are in other states in Mexico. You just had heads of semiconductor companies like in South Korea or in Mexico seeing the feasibility of developing semiconductor plants here. So yeah, all this stuff is coming in, and I read articles Mexico doesn't have enough workers, like qualified workers or people wanting to work, which is kind of bad because I guess a lot have left, and then others are just not trained to do work. And yeah, so economically things are up, but we anything can happen. We could have spokes in the wheel, the cartels and the criminals. In some ways, they're idiots. What really pisses me off is I've been reading on the highways. What has increased is the number of highway bandits.
Yeah.
So them stopping the semis and just taking goods, like semis filled with cars and other semis filled with other goods. So what do you think if you keep doing this, you criminals? Overall, what's going to happen to the state of the nation? Everything's just going to collapse. We're all going to be worse off because then these companies are going to leave. Why would they invest millions, semiconductors, EVs, whatever, all these companies, if they're just having all their stuff stolen?
Yeah.
So then the whole nation's just going to collapse because these people want to get rich quick. So
yeah, that is a real problem. Yeah, I mean, whenever we've driven around, we're always just using the toll roads because the non-toll roads they're just not safe, especially if you're a foreigner. But yeah, man, just on the China thing, I don't want to open a whole new can of worms. But what do you think about that coming war? You think there is a coming war with China?
I think there is, because again, I go back to a Bible prophecy and it talks about a big war towards the end, So I think there's going to be a war, some kind of war or big conflict, and it cites a 200 million man army, which is what China, if it went to war, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, U.S. military assessment assessed that China would be able to, if there was a conventional war, China would have 200 million soldiers, just like the prophecy says. And then it talks about the king of the north, let's say Russia. The Patriarch Kirill of Russia just accidentally referred to Putin as king. So you're seeing a lot of these little things like, king of the north, Russia, Putin, China. And then it talks about the kings of the east coming together in the Bible. Right. Multipolarity. Hello, Iran, China, Russia, all these countries coming together. And so I just see the clouds gathering that there will be a war. When? Who knows? But I think it's still a few years off. Mm-hmm. It seems like all parties are not quite yet ready in terms. It's like they're all getting ready. I see them all getting ready now, but we're not quite there yet. You see, everyone's militarizing. The U.S. is militarizing the Asia Pacific, South Korea, Japan, Philippines. China is getting ready. So they're not ready yet, but I think it's going to happen.
Man, yeah. I kind of sway back and forth on this one because on one hand I can kind of see everything that you're talking about, but on the other hand, that COVID to me, just everything that happened there, it was like the Chinification of the world. I mean, the way that it was, I don't know, and just a lot of stuff that's happening with Biden and his kind of administration. They seem really, really sympathetic to China, and they seem completely willing to just have a kind of almost like a low-key Chinese cultural revolution happening in America. They seem to kind of be on board with that. They're stoking the fires of it. They'll never kind of criticize China that I've seen, not in a way that Trump did. I'm not really a fan of Trump, but at least he did. He was kind of took a hard line with China. And I don't know, I almost wonder whether, and this is completely just an opinion that I have based on not really doing much digging or research, but it's just a suspicion I have, is that China already has their people in place high up in the American political system to basically not take a hard line with them. Like, is Biden and Hunter Biden and that administration, and are they not just sympathetic, but are they plants? I don't know. Is that a crazy thing to think?
No, I think your assessment is very good. I was reading even from Gregory Copley, who's been a guest of mine of the Strategic Studies Association. He was putting out a piece the other day questioning how strong China itself is, and the CCP and the PLA, and whether there might be a military coup in China where the PLA takes over. We don't really know the true strength of the CCP or Washington or EU or the Kremlin. So for any of them, as much as you want to listen to these armchair analysts, right? We don't really know how strong or weak some of these. Anything can change overnight, but still, the globalists, they use war to build back better, and it decreases the population. Yeah. So it's a very good tool, again, war. And the elites in every country, I think, don't really care about the citizens of their own countries. They have a globalist mentality. And so they've always got, look at Zelensky, who's one of the top politicians. Ukraine, his daughter just bought, in the south of France, like a $5 million home. Is that very patriotic Ukrainian, buying a fancy home abroad? Why not make a mansion in Ukraine? They'll just flee. They're globalists. Yeah. Right. So I think they think nothing of war, and so they'll just say, "Okay, let's start the war." And
yeah, but I guess it's exactly that. This whole globalist thing. It's like everyone's on board with the globalism, especially including China. We saw that with COVID. That looked like a Chinese project to me, and the whole of the Western world got on board with it. So I just think, are we really in a conflict with China? Or, perhaps they're at some point going to say, hey, you know what, we thought it was real, but, it wasn't, and we're going to go to war with China. Because actually, I don't know how it actually ends up kind of panning out, but yeah, I just wonder whether we have any appetite at all to go to war with China, or whether we're all on the same page with the globalism stuff. And
I asked that same question you do. I mean, I don't know, I asked my guests, how do we square that circle where they're collaborating at the globalist level, but then there are real conflicts? And I think, as you just said, I've kind of envisioned it where at some point, China has the century of humiliation. They're keeping in the back of their mind. Maybe they're waiting, buying their time for the moment when they can strike at the West. So maybe they are playing along, and then they're going to, the multipolar world's going to destroy Europe and the United States. And in some ways, we would deserve it from the spiritual perspective. You've got pastors like John MacArthur who say America is under God's wrath. We have become Sodom and Gomorrah, and that's what happens to nations when they are like that. That's God would use any tool. It's not to say God supports the CCP or the Kremlin. He would just use them as a tool to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. I know these are different scenarios, but yeah, I definitely, as you said, China could just at some moment say, okay, now's our time to get revenge for the century of humiliation. That's one scenario. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess also when you had McCarthyism and stuff like that happening, and you had this stuff happening during the Cold War with Russia. I mean, everyone was completely suspicious that there would be people who the Russian government had planted in foreign governments and in high positions of power. And it was true. Obviously there was a lot of it was paranoia, but it was also true. There was a lot of people that were found to be Russian agents in foreign governments, and I think vice versa as well. And yet that conversation doesn't even seem to occur. It's like nobody's even talking about it with China. No, the very suggestion that maybe China has people in high positions of power in foreign governments, it's kind of laughed out of the room. And it's like, well, why wouldn't it? That's basically the way that things have worked for, hundreds of years.
Yeah, and when you say about no one willing to fight for the U.S., maybe we are at this stage, this was part of the plan to wokeify the U.S., to prepare it, like you prepare the ground for planting the crops. And so maybe this whole wokeification, deconstruction of the U.S. infrastructure, financial system, culture, and has been a softening up for some kind of assault or attack. But yeah, I don't know. It's just going to be tough road ahead, I think.
Okay, cool. I got one last question for you, and then we'll wrap things up because I know we want to do a conversation for your pod as well. The American presidential election. What do you think about everything that's going on there? Like, with RFK Jr. and Trump and DeSantis and stuff. Like, what's your general take on that?
I've kind of given up on elections and political solutions. On one hand, I kind of don't care.
No, I don't think it's a solution, but I'm just saying, like, who do you think they want in power, and who do you think will get in power?
Yeah, I kind of don't care anymore. But on the other, I talked to Colonel McGregor on my podcast. He was questioning whether there will be 2024 elections. On the one hand, I think that's one scenario. Something crazy happens, so it's like some black swan event. Another is DeSantis just doesn't seem to be winning. It seems like forget about DeSantis.
Yeah,
he's like he seems clumsy. You see the way he laughs. I mean, he just doesn't seem appealing as a person. So the polls show Trump is like the only guy. It's basically just Trump on one side, and then RFK Jr. For me, he appeals to me the most in terms of the way he speaks. As a Kennedy, he seems to be the closest to, I think, our way of thinking. He recognizes the deep state, the big pharma, even how WEF wants to use climate change as a totalitarian device. So, yeah, I don't know. You've got some of these folks like Roger Stone and others positing, hey, maybe Trump and Kennedy will merge, but yeah, I don't really have any concrete. They might run Biden as Weekend at Bernie's, like part 2.
Really?
I can't see that, but it's a way of humiliating America before the world that they just want to. Maybe they'll double down on that. And look, we're going to put this complete clown as your head, just to show how pathetic you are.
Yeah.
Whoever really controls America.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, man. All right, cool. Man, this has been really awesome. I'm going to let you finish, but just really quickly for my audience, please consider supporting me. You can see the links down below. There's a bunch of ways to do it. You can do Bitcoin donation. You can also do buy me a coffee. And there is also membership tiers there as well. So you can give monthly donations to support my content. Hrvoje, thank you very much for joining me again. This has been really, really cool. Let my audience know where they can find all your stuff and then just any parting words that you have as well.
Yeah, people can buy me a coffee as well. Geopoliticsempire.com, tntradio.live. And I just opened up a Substack, and I'm shocked that I haven't even done anything with it. And people are I'm getting free subscribers and paid subscribers, which is amazing. So all of that helps in just subscribing to my channels. But, in spite of everything we've discussed, I remain joyful, chipper. I've got my white pill in the form of Jesus Christ, but the sun is shining. Enjoy the little things in life. Coffee. I know it's Starbucks. Sorry, that's all there was. But coffee, water, good company. Get some sea. Swimming in the salt water, and that's just people need to have a balance. Take in the alt media stuff, but don't go overboard. Enjoy the small things in life, good food, drinks, and family. So
amazing. Yeah. And check out Geopolitics Empire as well. I'll put the link in the description here to the conversation we're about to have. So there'll be that as well. So yeah, thanks again.